and gentlemen, and what is up? Welcome back. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day. My name's Brian. This is the Blunt Politics Podcast. Thank you, chat. Appreciate you. Before we get into all of the topics we're going to be covering today, it is Thursday, August 13th, 2026. What do you say we bring in the chat and say hi to you guys, as we typically do? Give you guys some screen time. The chat that makes this happen. Thank you to the mods first and foremost for making this a possibility. What's going on, Kyle? Nicholas, I see you down there. What's up, Melissa? How are you? What's going on, Tina? Yakov, salute to you, my friend, Mr. Foss over there on Twitch. How are you, brother? What's going on? Hi, Jay. How are you? What's up, Jackie? See you over there on Facebook. What's up, Gamer? Appreciate you guys. Make sure you're hitting that like button. Give me the 3 clicks if you could. You could like, subscribe, and hit that alert bell. Notifies you when I go live, notifies you when I put out a video or a short, anything like that. And it tells the old algorithm that you're involved and engaged with the stream. Kinky Streets, what's happening? What's going on? I see you in there. Appreciate that name. Like the name. Smoking Coin, what's going on? Appreciate you. Let's go. Hit that like button. We got a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about today. As usual, the insanity never stops as far as this administration. We got, first and foremost, some devastating numbers coming from the Strait of Hormuz as far as the claims that Trump is making, as far as the control that the United States has, compared to what we're actually seeing in reality come through the Strait of Hormuz. And then we also have numbers associated with the general economy. And this at the same time that Donald Trump is now reportedly spending roughly $1 billion on top of the $1 billion that taxpayer money spent on the refurb of his Qatari jet, which was a $400 million gift to begin with. But yeah, on top of that, he's now been reported to have spent or is spending about $900 to $1 billion on White House renovations. So we'll go through all of those. We got new reporting suggesting that the U.S. intelligence were actually highly skeptical of the Iranian threats, let's just say, towards Air Force One as it pertained to Ankara in Turkey and his whole plane swap that he had. So there's an article I want to go through talking about that. And obviously, you knew the Lego videos weren't going to let this slide. They weren't going to let the fact that Donald Trump slunk away from Air Force One on a goddamn catering truck. You know there was going to be some Lego videos. So there's a couple I want to get into. We got the wasteful Pentagon spending that's resurfacing amidst the horrible conditions for our soldiers and airmen in the Middle East right now. So, we talked about the airmen and the sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln that have allegedly attempted to even throw themselves overboard, which is ultimately a suicidal mission, a suicidal attempt at that, because it's not guaranteed that you're going to be found. It's not guaranteed that you're going to survive that, especially, in the midst of a war. It's not guaranteed that the ship will even be able to stop to pick you up. So all of those things to talk about, and they're combined now with the resurfacing of the reporting that the Pentagon, the wasteful Pentagon spending, where Pete Hegseth was spending millions and millions and $1 million on lobster tails, on steaks, on furniture. So I just want to go through and rehash a little bit about that. Just goes to show you what their priorities are as the soldiers are struggling right now on their very long deployments, some over 250 plus days without seeing shore, plumbing problems, shower problems, fires on board, low morale, the whole 9 yards. So we'll be talking about that. We have now more outlets reporting on Iran's willingness to prolong this conflict and control the Strait over, control the Strait of Hormuz. We've been talking about that for the last, I don't know how long, probably week or so, 2 weeks, about them in the reporting coming out saying that they're willing to outlast Donald Trump and his presidency, which again, we continue to tell you here, we do not have that time to spend. We do not have that time to waste in the United States. So we'll go through that. We also have the U.S. and Ukrainian forces squared off in a battlefield exercise in Germany. I think this took place some months ago, but the reporting now is just coming out. So they squared off in a battlefield in a battlefield exercise in Germany, and apparently it didn't go well for the Americans, right? The Ukrainians apparently have learned a lot more than the abilities of the Americans takes them as far as drone warfare is concerned. So we have that. We have confirmation of damage from a recent Ukrainian strike in Novorossiysk. So I think we have a Sukakamis video. We talked about that yesterday, I believe, where we didn't have really updates on what was struck or the damage from that strike. But I think we have more videos coming in that are detailing some of the damage that the Russian forces took during that strike. We also have updates from another successful night of Ukrainian strikes elsewhere against Russia, and that is from a Professor Gert heard his video. So what do you say we dive into it? I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button if you could. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 25,000 subscribers before midterm elections. So it's only with your help and your generosity that we're going to be able to do so. There are a multitude of different ways. If you have $1 or $2 floating around in those goddamn couch cushions that you want to send into an independent media channel like this one, if you think there's some benefit, if you enjoy the chat while you're watching this live stream, if anything, strikes you as being beneficial about this podcast, please think about sending in $1 or $2. We don't ask for more than that. If you think we're deserving of more than that, we're not going to stand in your way. But again, just $1 or $2 from everybody in the chat would do a great deal to change the, abilities of this podcast. So much appreciated to the mods, much appreciated to everybody else in the chat making this possible. What do you say we dive into a few of the numbers coming out from both the Strait of Hormuz and also just the general economy that Donald Trump is managing to wreck every single day? This is put out by Charlie Bolello. I'm not really sure. Let me see what his credentials are. He's the chief market strategist and creative planning. He's an investor, a writer, a reader, and a thinker, and he's been posting these kind of insights as to what's been going on with the Strait and what's been going on, again, like I said, with the general economy. So this one that he posted about 20 hours ago, he says, quote, "The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we will keep it. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel," and he's mocking, the quote put on Truth Social by Donald Trump. And there's nothing anybody, nothing Iran can do about it. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East, yada, yada, yada. Again, on with Donald Trump's statements. And then he posts this. He posts the crude oil outbound shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, indexed by volume, the 2025 average, and then the data as of 8/12/2026. So you can see the incredible dip that we've seen. Obviously, the blue line here is the 2025 7-day MA. And then if you look at the 2026 7-day, you can see here the incredible drop-off by the months as far as crude oil that has made it through the Strait of Hormuz. So again, it's just embarrassing for Donald Trump to attempt to claim ownership and control over the Strait when people can look at graphs like this. People can look at the reality on the ground and see just how many ships, a lot of the times in single digits. Sometimes you'll see 12, 13, 14, but nowhere near the 130, 140, 150, and all of the goods and oils that used to, traverse the Strait of Hormuz before this war started. So clear indication of how ridiculous and embarrassing it is for Trump to continue to claim that. This is, again, just about the general economy. This is talking about the July CPI report. So it says fuel oil and price changes over just the last year. Fuel oil plus 39%. Obviously, we've seen and felt that because of this war. Gasoline right behind that at 24.6%. Gas utilities at 4.3%. Electricity has risen in just the last year, 4.2%. Apparel, so anything that you need to wear, has risen 3.9% in pricing. Overall, the CPI is at plus 3.4. Food away from home, 3.4%. So I think that's like if you're eating out, restaurants type of thing. Shelter has gone up in general, 3.2%. Transportation, 2.9%. So I'm sure that's your Ubers, your Lyfts, your public transportation as well. Medical care has gone up 2.7%. Food at home, so groceries, obviously the things that you need to buy to store at home, up 2.7%. New cars up a 0.5%, which seems a little low. And then used cars, it says minus 1.9. I think that's a lot to do with the new car market and a lot of people not really happy, let's just be frank, with the new cars that are coming out, the lack of the feel for people that do enjoy driving, that do enjoy the feel and the sensation of getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. So I think these used cars, and especially a lot of the more specialized ones, let's just say the naturally aspirated V8s, V10s, V12s from years gone past, those are going up exponentially in price. But I think everything else here is dropping as far as that's concerned. So the new cars, you can see they're up a 0.5%. But overall, just a long list of things that are getting exponentially more expensive due to Donald Trump's failures, due to Donald Trump's failed promises, failed deliveries on his promises, the wars he started, the instability that he's responsible for. And it goes on here. Let me see. This was as in 65 consecutive months with U.S. inflation above the Fed's 2% target, the Fed has lost all credibility when it comes to fighting inflation. And it goes on, the Fed spent years telling us 2% inflation was the goal, but since January 2020, CPI has risen at a 4% annualized rate and is now 13% above a 2% 2% inflation trend. That's not price stability. It's a massive failure of monetary policy. And it goes on here to talk about new cars and price increases over the last 7 years. New cars, 22%. Used cars, 29%. Groceries, 33%. Shelter, 35% in the last 7 years. Family health insurance, 38%. Restaurants, 39%. Transportation, 42% in the last 7 years. Gasoline prices have risen, 43%. Electricity prices have risen, 43%. Auto insurance prices have risen nearly 50%. Fuel oil, 56% in the last 7 years. Donald Trump came in and promised everybody that he was going to lower our energy costs by 50%, when in actuality what we've seen over the last 7 years is them go up by 50%. Fuel oil, 56%. Home prices, 60%. Gas utilities, 62%. A dozen eggs is up 76% in the last 7 years. Ground beef is up 81% in the last 7 years. Coffee is 123% over the last 7 years. It's crazy. The federal government just took in $334 billion and spent $766 billion. Like I said, I'm no mathematician, but I'm going to say that's a bad thing. Typically, when you're only taking in $334 billion, but you're spending $766 billion, like that's a recipe for bankruptcy. Like that's a recipe for going broke, if I'm not mistaken. I'm no genius with money, I got to say. But this says that's a $432 billion deficit in just 1 month. And then he goes on to warn, don't try this at home, and puts on a graph here with the receipts, the outlays, and the surplus and deficit for July 2026, and how it got to the $432 billion deficit between Medicare, Social Security, individual income taxes, social insurance and retirement, corporation income taxes. The whole thing put into it comes out to a $432 billion deficit in just the month of July, which is, again, like he stated, something you should not try at home with your own finances. And then it goes, just the news, the bad news continues. The interest expense on U.S. public debt hit $1.37 trillion over the last 12 months, another record high. If it continues to increase at the current pace, it will soon be the largest line item in the federal budget, surpassing Social Security. And it's just, like I said, it's wild, the number of charts and graphs and pieces of data that you could put up there right now to show you how dangerous and teetering on the verge of destruction this economy is, based on what Donald Trump's responsible for, based off of these destabilizing wars that he's gotten us involved in, and obviously other aspects, his tariffs, other things as well. And that brings us into this one, because, we've all been talking about this, slinking away on the food truck, leaving the press corps and people in his own administration on the plane that originally, apparently, allegedly had the threat posed to it. But Donald Trump didn't care, you know what I mean? But this is now coming out here from the Washington Post that even the U.S. intelligence were skeptical, highly skeptical of the Israelis, where they ultimately got this information that the Iranians had some sort of threat posed to this aircraft. They got it from Israel. So you can tell right off the bat from this reporting that they were skeptical of this and whether or not it was real, whether or not they had any information and credible information to back it up at that. So this is saying here, quote, U.S. intelligence officials were skeptical of an Iranian assassination threat against President Donald Trump that was relayed by Israel and prompted an extraordinary clandestine maneuver that saw him secretly fly out of Turkey in an alternate military aircraft. Current and former U.S. officials familiar with the intelligence said the assassination threat was relayed by the Israeli government to the CIA, where analysts did not view the intelligence as compelling and conveyed the skepticism to Trump administration officials. One of the officials said. Another official called the report of threats against Trump's life Israel-derived, not U.S.-generated, and viewed as, quote-unquote, low confidence. So all of this was as a result of Donald Trump, again, taking the word of a foreign country, of a foreign government and their intelligence over our own. Right. So basically, he had the opportunity to say, well, what do you guys think in the CIA? What do you guys think in my own intelligence? And they would have told you how highly skeptical and how there was no evidence out there to suggest that it was a credible threat, based upon what the reporting is saying right now. But otherwise, Donald Trump went with the word of, again, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, Mossad, who I'm sure had, some hand in this, no, undoubtedly. But it's just crazy the lengths that Donald Trump is willing to go to, and how fearful he is, obviously, for his life, and how seriously he takes these threats that, apparently Iran is either not making or they are making. Israel is either propping them up to keep Donald Trump, pissed off and, ready to fight and ready to, continue this war against Iran, which is, another huge aspect of this. And I'm sure another reason why the United States intelligence had those second thoughts and was like, okay, I don't know if we can actually believe this. Of course, they have their own, reasoning to do the propaganda, reasoning to try to fool us and to make us believe that these are credible threats, when in actuality, there's nothing out there to suggest that we need to take these measures and go to these levels, to kind of switch planes and put these people in danger and keep people in the administration on one plane, not utilize the call sign Air Force One, when in actuality, any plane that Donald Trump or the president of the United States is on is technically Air Force One. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show you, like I said, him and the picture of him golfing with the anti-missile defenses behind him now with the barbed wire, right? It looks like he's fucking golfing at Guantanamo Bay. So you can tell the levels in which he's taken this, and how fearful he is for his life. And then again, like I continue to bring up, how many red flags that raises, as it pertains to the domestic attempts on his life and the lack of investigation, the lack of answers, the lack of, transparency as those, incidents are considered, like the golf course incidents, obviously Butler, the multitude of ones that we've seen so far, the White House Correspondents' Dinner as well. Donald Trump allowed to just, sit in the background and peek around the corner and, sit there behind the curtains and see what's going on. Butler allowed to raise his fist, ask for his shoes, drop the flag, put the reporters and photographers in the right place that they want him to be in. So, it smells really, really fucking fishy, and it raises a lot of red flags and, poses a lot more questions than it answers as far as that's concerned. But, this reporting now out there suggesting that the United States intelligence was highly skeptical right off the bat of whether or not this was a credible threat posed. And even the Turkish are not too thrilled with what's going on with this whole situation, because they're a little offended that the United States would suggest that they would allow the president of the United States to be attacked or in any danger, suggesting that a NATO country doesn't have the ability to defend its homeland or to defend the guests in its homeland. So, they've kind of put out a few statements being like, well, that doesn't really reflect too greatly upon us, kind of that whole maneuver that Donald Trump had to go to. It also shows the ridiculousness in Donald Trump's claims that Iran has no more military capabilities. Like, why would Donald Trump put himself in a catering truck, right? Why would he have to go in the plane on one side, out the plane on the other, before the media made it onto the back of the plane, sit there with the fucking French fries and the cheeseburgers, ride 2 seconds over to another plane so that he could be shuffled into another plane, if he thought that he had militarily defeated the country that was supposed to be making those threats? Can anybody answer that question, chat? I'm just curious. Does anybody on the MAGA side, you think there's any maggots or Republicans or conservatives or anybody that continues to follow Donald Trump that put those two things together? Are those, can you put those two things together for me in the chat if there's any trolls, right? Do we have any maggots in the chat? Please answer that question. Why would Donald Trump go to these lengths if in reality, and what Donald Trump was saying was true, that Iran has no more military capabilities, they have no more missiles, they have no more drones, they have no more radar, they have no more Air Force, they have no more Navy, they have no more leadership, people don't know who's who and what's going on. Like, if that was all true, why the fuck is he putting himself in with the cheeseburgers and the French fries? Anybody? Somebody? I don't know. Maybe somebody can clip this and actually make it to, and put this on one of the, the websites that may get to the maggots, that may get to somebody that follows Donald Trump. I'm not sure, but I'm desperate to figure out what the answer and what, kind of synapses are firing in the brains of these idiots that have to kind of put an answer out when they think about those two things happening at the same exact time. But, who's not letting this go? And, you knew they weren't going to let this go, was the Iran Lego video crew. This one, I believe, is the Persia Boy Hemat version of Donald Trump getting in the, let me throw this on the screen for you guys. And I think there's just like a short one put out by Explosive Media. I don't think it's so much a song, but I think it's just kind of like a short clip making fun of Donald Trump in this situation. But this is after months of white flag talk, threats, and chest beating towards Iran, the optics are unreal. Big speech, big jet, secret exit, they say here. So let me see if I can turn this one up, get this out of here. And again, this is Persia Boy Hemat, and this is Cater Force One. I think this is titled Cater Force One, talking about Donald Trump slunking away from Air Force One again because of the credible or non-credible threats posed to him in the aircraft by Iran. So let's check this one out real quick.
Big speech, big jet, cameras got the shot.
It just makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh right off the bat nowadays. You know what I mean? Because you know what's coming is going to be like more realistic than any of the propaganda that CENTCOM or Donald Trump or the Pentagon puts out right off the bat.
Cater Force One, Cater Force One, Air Force for the cameras, food truck for the run. Cater Force One, Cater Force One, talk like a king till the warning came through. Front door swagger, back door flight, press on the decoy.
Front door swagger, back door flight.
Boy with the window shades tight. Cater Force One, Cater Force One, whole tough guy image came undone. Boarded Air Force One for the big photo op. Wave like a king, then he made the swap. Catering truck lifted him up real clean. Drove him across the tarmac like a meal on the scene. C-32A, waiting in the dark while the decoy plane took the press on the arc. They thought he was with them. Shades pulled tight, but the
I was going to say, they even have the shades down in the background. You see that? The shades would pull down in the background, much like the reporting that came out there where, even Donald Trump was questioned, hey, why the hell did they make us pull down our shades? And, he kind of obviously knew why, but didn't know what exactly they were talking about because he wasn't on the same plane.
It's already gone into the night. One plane for the picture, one plane for the flight, one story for the public, one escape in the night. Cater Force One, Cater Force One, Air Force.
Cater Force One is crazy. Cater Force One is diabolical. Cater Force One. Just stick a couple jet engines on the fucking catering truck and we'll just ship them around in that. It'd be more happy anyway. You wouldn't have to press a button for a Coke, right? You wouldn't have to make any calls for any cheeseburgers. It'd already be fucking surrounded by them 24 hours a day. So let's just, maybe we'll get an armored catering truck, slap some fucking jet engines on that bitch, and he can just consistently 24 hours a day travel around in his catering truck.
Force for the cameras, food truck for the run. Cater Force One, Cater Force One, all that tough talk till the warning came through. Front door swagger, back door flight, decoy in the air while you slip out of sight. Cater Force One, Cater Force One, Iran changed the rap before the night was done. Secret defense. Air Force One for the image, Cater Force One for the exit.
Air Force One for the image, Cater Force One for the exit. And again, you knew they weren't going to let it go. Clearly, I don't even know. This probably has, over 61,000 likes in just over a day. So you knew that was going to get a lot of attention. I think there was one other one here from Explosive Media. I don't think it was really a full-length song or anything, but it was just kind of like a short, kind of representation of what they feel about this situation. And you can see here Trump surrounded by what looks to be kebabs, or what do you call that? Is that shawarma? What are we calling it here? I think I'm getting it wrong at this point, but my apologies. But he's obviously surrounded by the food in a no parking zone, or a no king zone, as you can see, taking out the PAR. But I just want to see what they're playing here. You'll be eaten soon. So again, just a short message to Donald Trump. Taco Turkey is the title as they posted this one. Taco Turkey. So, everybody getting on Donald Trump for his, clearly showing signs of weakness, right? I mean, I think that's what this ultimately boils down to, and what people notice, even people that are, in the cults, people that are following Donald Trump, supportive of this war, they recognize that this is a sign of weakness. Whether obviously you want the president protected. I don't think anybody has a problem with the Secret Service going to whatever lengths they have to do to protect the office of the presidency. I think people really have a problem when it comes in where the press had no idea, where there was other people in his administration that had no idea, that weren't filled in, and that there was other ways in which, other options that this could have been handled. The flight could have never have taken off until they could have confirmed, corroborated, or denied whatever threats were out there, whatever Israeli threats that they said, whatever threats by the Israelis, whatever threats the Israelis by the Iranians said that were out there, like you can confirm or deny those and just have the plane stay on the tarmac. Say that there was engine trouble. Say that there were, whatever. Somebody had, somebody's had a medical emergency. There's so many different things and ways and options that you could have handled this differently. And clearly, the other aspect is how it shows weakness. It shows that you're not in control. You don't think that behind the scenes you are the alpha and the omega here, and that you are like the all-knowing person that controls everything militarily. Like, that you're in danger. You're under threat here because the side that you're engaged in a war with is not defeated totally 100% militarily, like you continue to boast and like you continue to talk about, from basically day 2, 3, and 4 of this war. It's been clear, based upon the injuries sustained, based upon the deaths that have occurred under your leadership and during this war, that they are not defeated militarily. They still have control over the Strait of Hormuz, to the extent in which they're already divvying it up with the Omanis. They're already talking about percentages. They're already talking about routes. They're already talking about countries that will or will not have to pay the toll going through there, or will not be allowed. So basically, flexing, right? They may, and they're definitely not going to get all of the ask and demands that they're calling for. I think some of them are even implanted in there to not get a deal done, to make this thing actually go and prolong it even further, to make Donald Trump look stupid, to put even more pressure upon the economy of the United States, where they really haven't seen, like, we've been kind of in that limbo where the prices have been elevated, but they haven't been to the extent really in which a lot of the economists and people that study this type of thing thought it could get to. But we're still not out of the woods yet, right? It still has the distinct possibility of getting to that point, the $150, $200 barrel per barrel of oil type of price range that everybody's been worried about. So just because we haven't seen that yet, and kind of these oil CEOs and the oil conglomerates have played the game, related to the bullshit and propaganda that Donald Trump posts about a deal being done. And then obviously it goes back up when they recognize that there's been another, 10, 13, 14 days of consistent bombing. And then Trump will announce, a deal being done when we've expended too many of our weapons and we don't have enough interceptors left. And then the oil prices have done, the huge jumping and fluctuating, where the gas prices have really not done that so much. They've been a little bit more relaxed and been a little bit more behind the oil futures and stuff as far as price changes. So we're still, as I last seen, above $4 a gallon in the country as far as a national average. But yeah, that was the Iran Lego videos taking their shots at Donald Trump for his act of weakness, his sign of weakness there. But let's see if we can hop into a little bit of the reporting that's coming back up of the wasteful spending from the Pentagon, under Pete Hegseth's leadership, and then we can compare that to what we're learning and listening to, and the reporting that's coming out from the soldiers, sailors, and airmen that are involved in any way in the Middle East war right now, their long deployments, the mental suffering that they've been under, obviously the problems with the plumbing, the showers, fires as far as laundry that have taken out bunks, making people have to sleep in odd and weird places for lengthy periods of time. So this is something that's been coming back up in relation to those stories that we've been hearing, and families speaking up, and the reporting of people literally attempting to jump overboard of an aircraft carrier, which is pretty much a death sentence, especially in a time of war where the ship can't necessarily just put it in fucking reverse and go. It's just not how it really works. Could possibly be. You might get lucky and have a ship behind you that could do that, or they could drop and release a rescue vehicle, basically, or a rescue boat but it's not always the case, depending on what level of threat they're under. But here's the reporting coming back up from Pete Hegseth, where he spent $15 million on ribeye steaks, 6.9 million on lobster tails, and more as far as the expenditure from the Pentagon on like expensive furniture, like the whole 9 yards. And I think I have the let's see if I can pull this one up right here, because I think this goes into a little bit more detail. Lobstergate, if you'll remember, Hegseth's Pentagon faces backlash over $7 million lobster spree, which was just a small fraction of the greater spending that they went through to try to expend or try to meet their goals, or to make sure that they didn't have leftovers in the budget so that they could say that they needed that same amount or even more in the next budget request. So this says under here, you can see under Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon revealed the United States went on a $93 billion spending spree in September 2025, according to Pentagon's report. Hegseth signed off on blowing $6.9 million on lobster tails, $2 million on Alaskan king crab, more than $15 million on ribeye steak, and $124,000 on ice cream machines. And I think the list goes on here. You can see $15 million on ribeye, $2 million Alaskan king crab, $140,000 on donuts, $124,000 on ice cream machines, $98,329 for a Steinway and Sons grand piano, which I'm sure was like prominently featured in the reporting when this first came out. This is $225 million in furniture, featuring individual chairs costing $1,900 a piece, multiplied by, again, however many people at the Pentagon were involved in the ordering of those. $12,540 for fruit baskets, and $5.3 million on Apple devices, right? Totaling $93 billion that was supposed to be spent at the end of the month of September. Since it says here, opening the books called the spending completely unacceptable, noting that the $93 billion total was the highest month of September spent since at least 2008. And like I said, they kind of did this at the last minute to make sure that they could request at least that much or more. They show that they would need it, and they used it, and they spent it, and it wasn't just wasted. It says Gavin Newsom mocked the Secretary of Defense by posting an AI-generated image of Hegseth lounging amid steaks and lobsters, captioned, Hegseth blowing $93 billion of taxpayer dollars in 1 month. And again, you kind of, add this into the reporting that we're seeing and that we've talked about over the last couple of shows of the, the text messages. Like here's one here from, Aaron Rupar posted of a family member talking to somebody on the ship, right? We talked about this one yesterday, I believe, where they're asking, like, why the hell isn't there milk? Right. So I think they posted, and the original one was this one, if I'm not mistaken. I think they have it. Yeah, this one where it's like, honey, I'm eating cereal right now. Wish there was milk, though. Haven't had milk in 3 months. And I would assume that the continuation of that is, why isn't there any milk? And then they go on to, kind of explain why. The soldier, the airman, or the sailor goes on to say, so the supply ship that comes here can't bring the fruits and stuff because it can't stay fresh long enough with the time it gets them to get here, right? And then the response from the family member was, wow. Question was, any idea who is supposed to come and relieve you guys in August? Basically stated, you guys know who's coming. Is it like 100% guaranteed that you're going to be done in August? And then the response for that was, so we haven't had anything fresh but meat because it's frozen, right? And that obviously was going on with the topic beforehand. And then sometimes it gets here rotten. So talking about the meat. And then the response from the family member was obviously repulsive. There was another one here. And it says, yeah, families are just as frustrated as the people on the boat. This deployment is the worst one, and I pray no other boat goes through the same. Even people that have been deployed 100 times claim this one to be the worst and believe it can't get worse than this. The Navy does not care. The mission will always come first. I was talking to some random dude at the smoke pit, and he was saying it's an experiment the government is doing to see how far they can push sailors' limits of being out to sea with the worst experience. I don't know anymore. I know my family needs me, and the Navy is not being fair right now, taking me away for longer than expected. Worst part, my expectations were already at an all-time low, but per usual, the Navy beat those too by going lower than hell. So there's that. And again, that was sent at 7:52 a.m., as you can see there. And there's a multitude of these stories. There was the stories and the reports of the meeting that Hung Kao had, and different kind of high-ranking officers and people affiliated with this mission had with the family, of some of the people on, such as the USS Abraham Lincoln, and obviously other people involved involved, and they were expressing kind of their disbelief with the conditions that they were under. We talked about the food, right? Let me see if there was another one here. So I think there was this one. Let me see if there's another one that we could show here, because there was the food. Oh, I don't know if I'll go back now. No, but we showed you that on the last show, kind of like the green eggs and ham shit that they were trying to feed these people, and it was disgusting. You couldn't even tell what the hell it was. Really wasn't even distinguishable as food, right? Like this, like the horrendous conditions again for these people that are just out there at the expense and for the on the behalf of Donald Trump for his evil bidding, to be used as this like Gestapo-like force, this SA-like force around the world to project his tiny dick power in all areas and aspects of the globe that he wants it projected into. Like, that's exactly why we've lost 18 servicemen and women. That's exactly why there's been several hundred that have been wounded, and in a lot of cases, severely wounded. That's why we can have to expend billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on this war, because of Donald Trump's maniacal views on what his power projection should be throughout the planet, because he wants to suck up the planet's oil is his last dying wish, apparently, to kind of get completed as president, because none of it makes sense. And it's unfortunate that we have to continue to talk about these conditions that these sailors are facing, just because Donald Trump, has thrust them into this position. And I think there was a few more here. Let me see if I could throw this on, if I'm not mistaken. There was the hellish conditions here. Following hellish conditions aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, the U.S. is sending the aircraft carrier USS George Washington to the Middle East to replace the USS Abraham Lincoln, which has now been deployed for more than 250 days, setting a record for consecutive days at sea, per the Wall Street Journal. The catastrophic conditions include shortages of basic supplies, sailors running out of toothpaste and soap, water contamination, plumbing issues, deteriorating mental health, deck safety concerns, food shortages, and disruptions in the mail systems, with care packages lost in transit for months. And again, if anybody's ever served in the chat here, please let me know, especially if you've ever been, if you were a sailor, if you were in the Navy and you were out to sea for long periods of time. Like, how important were those care packages? How important was it for you to to get your communications with your family? Like, especially if you're dealing with all of these other things, lack of toothpaste, soap, running water, plumbing issues, toilets, mental health conditions, deck safety conditions, food shortages, like all of those other things on top of it. Like, it just, I don't think you can put like too much importance on like connections with your family, care packages, things from home that, make you feel comfortable, that you're familiar with, that make you feel like you're back at home sometimes. Like, it's crazy. And then it also talks about the multiple sailors that have tried jumping overboard and attempted suicide, which we've talked about. It says the USS George Washington is being escorted by the USS Robert Smalls and the USS Shoup, moving westbound, together towards the Strait of Malacca, with the expected arrival in the Middle East being roughly 8 days. So good to see that the USS Abraham Lincoln is, as far overdue as it is going to get their replacement, going to get their relieving, so they can come back and get their R&R after what has been, like I said, a record-setting deployment as far as days at sea, consecutive days at sea. But Donald Trump would have had them out there a lot longer. He doesn't care about their well-being. He doesn't care about what they're being fed. And I think there was more here. This is Aaron Parnas, who continues to get and do some great reporting on this. Credit where credit is due. A lot of family and friends seem to be sending him some pretty personal emails and text messages from airmen involved or sailors involved in this. Here's another one. Let's see here. I'll read the caption that he put on that real quick. My inbox is now filled with messages from individuals who have family members on the USS Abraham Lincoln. This note shows that they have no, quote, workable toilets around us. Service members are served undercooked chicken, and they do not get mail regularly. So again, this is not to be undercut by the fact that now the Navy is obviously recognizing the necessity to get the USS Abraham Lincoln back to port and to get them relieved, to get another ship in there to take their spot. Like, this is the situation that would have continued had this reporting not continued to come out. Had people like Aaron Parnas, had family members like the people that we're talking about right now not spoken out, had, not to give myself too much credit in this, but, shows like mine and others on YouTube that have been consistently bringing this out and keeping it in the headlines and making sure that people understand exactly what these people are going through, because of the maniacal beliefs and on the behalf of Donald Trump and this administration. So he says here, let's read this one. So it says, I'm just so tired of this bullshit. This bullshit boat code keeps saying that we're doing blockade ops and this and that. And it's like, bro, we're tired. If we hit a fucking port, it wouldn't be bad, but we haven't been on land since fucking Guam. Fuck at least COVID cruise. We got to step off the fucking ship every few weeks. Everyone has just burned the fuck out, and they gave us 2 days off and a beer day. But it's like we just want to leave the ship. The fucking ship can't handle it anymore. And again, you can sense the frustration. You can sense the anger here. It says we have no workable toilets around us. Got to go all the way to the forward of the ship to use the toilet. No water fountains to have to walk all the way to the galley or the ready room. And the food is shit, undercooked chicken, undercooked chili beans. This shit is the fucking worst. And to top it all off, we ain't getting mail regularly. I've had to ask for deodorant from people because mine hasn't shown up on the Raz yet, or body wash. Gotta ration that shit, and I can't buy anything from the ship store because it don't got it no more, and not enough has been sent to the ship. So again, just the overall frustrations of somebody going through all of those problems. Again, it's good to see that they're now going to be relieved and get their time, to get their R&R and, to feel a nice hot shower, I'm sure, for the first time in a while. But again, that doesn't take away from the willingness that people like Pete Hegseth, the Navy in general, obviously the Pentagon, CENTCOM, is willing to put these sailors and airmen under for this ridiculously futile, non-beneficial, destabilizing war that we just continue to thrust ourselves into here. But let's see if there was anything else from Aaron, if he's posted any more of these messages. So it was that one from 31 minutes ago. Let's see if there's anyone else. We went through that one as far as where's the milk and stuff. We talked about this one on the last show, but I'll read it again. My husband is on board, and he and many others who work shifts have been getting less than 5 hours of sleep at night for months. It's not just the lack of food, lack of water. It's everything combined, like I was just talking about. I have been so worried about his mental health and physical health since the war started, and it's just getting worse. And that was just a fraction of the sentiment being shown here by some of the family members of the people involved, obviously stationed in the area, on top, on the vessels, on any of the warships that are involved in this war right now. Let's see here. I just want to see if there was any of these messages that I missed. I don't think there was, because like I said, we covered a bunch of these on the show, I think yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I think we kind of covered all that. All right, let's see if we can jump into this next one. What was this next one that I wanted to get into? Did I even talk about the fact that Trump was now going to be spending $900 million? I forget now if I even talked about that. Let me see here. Was it this one that I was bringing up? Like I said, I have so many of these goddamn articles and shit that I'm trying to bring up on the show. Sometimes I got it mixed up here. But let me see. I think it was one of these ones. 900 million. Let me just type this in real quick. Yeah, I'll bring myself back up. What's happening, guys? Appreciate you. Hit that like button. If you could, if you haven't already, hit that notification bell at least. Let's see. Yeah, this was the one I was talking about. I don't know if it was in the next one. Like I said, it might even be in the next couple that I wanted to talk about. But, just in case I missed it, just in case I didn't have the right one brought up, let's go over this one. Because this is at the same time as we're talking about the ripping away of healthcare from people, food stamps, the cancer funding, the funding for cancer research, obviously the lack of affordability in this country, the exponential rise in cost, as we talked about in the beginning of the show. We're talking about this. Donald Trump's ballroom, the little, rehabilitation that he's been doing, as he calls it, for the White House and making everything gold, now set to cost taxpayers about $900 million. Says the Trump administration plans to spend at least $900 million on the White House grounds constructions, a significantly larger price tag than previously reported. Taxpayers would cover most of the cost, according to records reviewed by the Post. Let's see if we can click on this one. go through just a little bit of this, because the ridiculousness of having to simultaneously report on the exorbitant spending that Donald Trump's doing on, his little fucking, vanity projects that he's got going on, as well as the spending on the war, as well as the, the cost to the American families. I think, Harry Anton put it at something about $4,235 per household as kind of what this like jump has cost, each individual family. So let's see if I can throw this on there. Yeah. So Trump administration is set to spend $900 million of taxpayer money on the White House construction. Let's see if we can go through this, because I think Waj Ali, I know for a fact that I had some reporting by Waj, because I remember he put a tweet out there, and I think it was on, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was on Aaron's website. Wasn't on this one. MQ-5 Reaper drones, no, that's not it. Train missile fire, that's not it. Sorry, I'm just trying to go back and see if I did have that one pulled up. Why don't I just look up Waj? I'll look up Waj Ali, because I think it was Aaron Rupar that posted him anyway. So let me just throw this one on real quick, and then we'll go back to this Washington Post article if I can. Share this tab. We'll go back to Waj's page. And I think it was... Can't be too far back. Oh, it wasn't that one. Because he posted that diagram that we just saw there, so it should be kind of easy to distinguish if I'm not mistaken. For crying out loud. Why is everything so difficult to find when I want to find it on the show? But if I didn't want to find it on the show, it'd be the first thing that popped up on my timeline. First thing that popped up on my feed would be this thing. But anyway, I think he just kind of reposted this article with his own commentary on it, and posted the diagram that we'll take a look at as far as the Washington Post is concerned. But anyway, let's see. Just nothing's easy when I try to go live. It's just never fails. It never fails. But all right, let's dive into this one, because this is what he posted to begin with anyway. So let's go through this. Between the helipad, the East Wing Ballroom, the Rose Garden, his planned visitor screening facility. Like, we're talking about ridiculous amounts of spending here, on top of the $1 billion that we had to spend to kind of, refurbish his Qatari jet. So it says the Trump administration once again plans to spend $900 million for construction projects on the White House grounds, a significantly larger price tag than has been previously reported, and one that would be covered primarily by taxpayers, according to records reviewed by the Washington Post. Instead of securing money directly from Congress, the records show the administration has pieced together funding from other agencies and private donors as directed it to a little-known account that typically holds a few $1 million for routine maintenance of the executive mansion. Confidential contracts and related planning documents indicate that the administration plans to use money in that account for White House modernization projects. The administration's terms for President Donald Trump's planned overhaul of the property, at the center of which is a gilded East Wing ballroom. Together, the records reveal in the greatest detail yet how the Trump administration has sidestepped Congress and shielded visibility into what would become the most expensive overhaul of the White House in more than 80 years. Let me just read that again, because it's something that we typically hear about Donald Trump and his administration, but I want to make sure to highlight that and really drill it home every time we hear it, because the sidestepped of Congress, we could put that into, comparison with the Iran war. We can now talk about it with this and in many other aspects as well. But it says here, together, the records reveal in the greatest detail yet how the Trump administration has sidestepped Congress and shielded visibility, which is, again, the opposite of transparency, right? Which is what they promised time and time again. KKK Caroline, who's going to be hitting the fucking bricks at the end of the month. She's time and time again gone out there and been like, we're the most transparent administration in the history of this country. Like, bull fucking shit. So they've shielded visibility, again, make it harder to see, opposite of transparent. Anyway, I know I've drilled that home. But what would become the most expensive overhaul of the White House in more than 80 years? A federal appeals court struck a blow to Trump's plans on Friday, though, ruling that the administration needed congressional approval to continue building of the East Wing ballroom. Trump vowed to appeal the ruling, which applied only to the ballroom, setting up a Supreme Court battle over the limits of his authority to remake the White House. Quote, Congress has exclusive authority to regulate the construction and demolition of the White House structures, Judges Patricia A. Millett and Bradley N. Garcia wrote in an accompanying opinion. You can go on here and see some of his vanity projects that they got going on. Records reveal how the Trump administration sidestepped Congress, as they just put in there. I don't know why they'd repeat it again, but there's the ballroom construction, as you can see. Closer look at the ballroom construction. The contracts and money for the work are being routed through an executive residence, a White House office with fewer than 100 employees that maintains the president's private home. In the past, administrations planning major changes to the White House grounds have done so by submitting budget requests to Congress, receiving appropriations, and directing agencies to seek budget approvals and hire contractors, according to historians and budget records. The Trump administration has not disclosed the total cost of the planned White House construction or shared the details about the sources or original intended purposes of most of the money it has assembled. Trump has repeatedly said that the East Wing Ballroom project would be covered by private donations, which we all knew was bullshit right off the jump. The Post previously reported that the projected cost of the East Wing construction alone was $600 million, with half coming from taxpayers. The confidential contracting documents include the cost upgrades to nearby Lafayette Square, construction of the helipad, a new visitor screening center, and the other previously reported projects that would drive the total cost and the work of the grounds to at least $927 million, right? I mean, again, we're already $27 million more than like what the headlines are saying. So the headlines are all stipulating this $900 million price tag. But when in reality, it's going to be a lot closer to $1 billion by, when all is said and done. We're already up to 927 in this article right here. Let me see here. Where do we leave off? 927. Yeah. It says that the contracts reviewed by the Post leave open the possibility that the work will not move forward as planned and that the money will not be spent. As of the end of June, the administration officials had issued orders for over $100 million of work to be paid from the White House Maintenance Account Budget Office, records show. The White House did not answer questions from the Post about the source of all the funding or the total cost of the planned work, but said the money is being spent in, quote, a manner consistent with Congress's original intent, which what the fuck does that even mean? President Trump continues to implement long overdue and necessary renovations to beautify the people's house. This is yada, 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 coming from Davis Dinkle, his little spokesperson there. But yeah, you can see all of the, here's him talking about the columns, right? You remember him talking about the columns. I obviously need to get the columns done. You know what I mean? Do we have anything about the columns? I should have a sound bite about the columns. We do have this one, though.
To officially name the undisputed. Just when did this come out?
Yeah, good one. Really nailed that one. But let's see here. The executive residence, which employs housekeepers, curators, calligraphers, and carpenters, has not previously managed major construction efforts. Experts said in recent years, Congress has appropriated $2.5 million annually to its maintenance account, known as the White House Repair and Restoration. So once again, we're going to be talking about a company or a, an agency that has not been previously tasked with anything like this, much like we saw with the reflecting pool, right? And Donald Trump's little fucking side buddy that used to give him hand jobs back in the day in the hot tub at Jeffrey Epstein's house or whatever the fuck. So that's why he got the job. Not that he had any knowledge or information or education on working on national monuments or restoring national monuments or anything like that. But yeah, another one of these agencies that are seemingly, tasked with typically around $2.5 million for, White House restores and restoration, now being tasked with like about $1 billion of construction and funds going through their systems now. So since Trump took office, the administration has now directed $875 million to that account. Public budget records show that is incredibly unusual, said Seren Lindesgren-Savage, counsel for the Protect Democracy and Advocacy Group that is suing the Trump administration for allegedly withholding public information about the federal spending. But again, this is all in relation to the struggles that Americans are facing. Obviously, put this in conjunction with the ridiculous spending by the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth. Put that right next to what the United States military servicemen and women are going through right now, whether it be on the different bases in the Middle East, whether it be on the different ships now stationed, U.S., whether it's aircraft carriers, destroyers, or any other vessels right now that have been out there for long periods of time. good to see that the Abraham Lincoln once again is going to get its kind of time out of the out of the war there. But it's been far too long, and it's been incredibly strenuous. And morale is another big aspect of war. Like the soldiers' morale, their willingness to fight, their kind of understanding or belief in what this war is about, or what any war is about, like, is a huge. Like, it's not just, you don't just get everything out of these soldiers no matter what. Like, the conditions have to be right. That's why being so well funded, being well fed, having great equipment, like, that keeps morale up, that keeps morale boosted to a certain extent. But when you start seeing degradation of the food that you're getting, your ability to take a shower, your ability to take a shit, like, all of these things, you're obviously overextended on your deployment anyway. You don't understand what the fuck you're even doing here. You've lost friends or buddies in this war, whether it be in jets or on U.S. bases stationed in the area. So you can see how it all stacks up, and it gets to a breaking point as far as what people can handle emotionally, and you can see where the shell shock it kind of factor comes in, or the shell shock angle comes in sometimes when you hear about World War I or World War II, and people just having that 1,000-yard stare, as they called it, and being freaked out about sounds, like, just how the psychosis of being in an active environment like that for a prolonged period of time, and what it can do to people. Because we've heard from, there was one where a wife was talking about her husband was a 13-year veteran, Navy veteran, and he was one of the people that reportedly, allegedly tried to, or is at least speaking about it, or attempted to throw himself off of one of these ships. And she thinks he's going to be dishonorably discharged, and his 13-year career is going to be thrown down the toilet. It's going to mean nothing. And she believes that that's not fair because of the added stresses and the lack of treatment, right, that these soldiers have been getting. So, all right, let's see if there was another one here I wanted to talk about as well. Was it let me see here. I wanted to throw, was it, for crying out loud, I don't know why these reset in the background. It'd be so much easier if they just stayed where I put them. That would be fantastic. Oh, but wasn't that. All right, let's go on to this one before I run out of time. I'm going to throw this one on real quick, because I'm just curious how both of these channels are speaking about the recent developments here. Oh, you be quiet. Because this is both CNN and Fox talking about the, Jesus Christ, just play in the background when I ask you to. Speaking about the prolonged war that the Iranians are now speaking about, and their readiness and willingness to make this a prolonged action, to make Donald Trump suffer, Republicans suffer, and Americans suffer more broadly, going into midterms, obviously with the economic ramifications, because they now see that Donald Trump is kind of handcuffed. And obviously with the reporting out there where Donald Trump said he's now kind of, he said he's low-keying it. He's looking for off-ramps. Dan Cain is looking for off-ramps as well. I'm curious how these two individual stations are speaking about this. So this is CNN speaking about it first, and then I want to see what Fox News is saying about this whole thing as well. So let's see what this one has to say, and we'll dive into the next one. But we don't have to go through the whole thing, just a couple minutes, first couple minutes of it.
The U.S. and Israel launched strikes on Iran nearly 6 months ago. Donald Trump has repeatedly declared victory, while also claiming a deal is just around the corner. But a top advisor to the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is now indicating that Tehran is the one calling the shots and could actually prolong the war until the U.S. president is out of office. That has.
And again, this was something that was only being said in, I only saw it in being reported by certain Twitter accounts at first. And obviously we talked about it here in, just the rumblings behind the scenes from the Iranians, that they, kind of have seen the position that they're in, and they feel like they're in a very, dominant position in this fight, and can demand things that even they know may not ever be a reality. They may not ever get. But they're more than willing to wait this out and to prolong this, or at least make it seem like they're ready to do so. Whether or not they can, and whether or not that's something that they're likely to do or want to see happen, is a whole nother discussion. But they feel confident enough, they feel strong enough, dominant enough in this fight right now to at least project that. right? To at least project that confidence. So, like I said, it's now being picked up by more and more of the mainstream media and more of these outlets that are reporting on the IRGC advisors and other people within the Iranian government that are now talking about this, willingness to keep that strait closed for a long period of time.
Doesn't stop Trump from ramping up his own rhetoric. He's now threatening to blow Iran away if it tries to do anything, and he's still insisting that the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz. But shipping data is not backing that up. One maritime intelligence firm says that only 14 vessels crossed the strait on Tuesday.
Again, making it increasingly more embarrassing for the United States to try to take ownership, to try to say that we have control when people can very easily go back and look at what the traffic was pre-war levels. And then they can go back and they can look at what's going on now as far as, boats, ships traveling and going through the Strait of Hormuz. And 14 is let me just say, a lot fucking less than what was usually going through. And again, we've seen days with 7. We've seen days with 2 and 3. Like, that's not going to sustain the population of the planet. That's not going to sustain the countries that utilize this specific waterway to get their necessities, to get their goods and oil to them. Like, there's only so long that's going to be able to last before that bubble bursts. We continue to look at our strategic oil reserve. I think that went down, another couple ticks, as it were. So, we're forever teetering on and, flirting with that balance of the economy finally tipping over the edge there as it pertains to oil and petroleum.
It's a dramatic decrease from pre-war levels. And in what may be another sign that Washington and Tehran remain far apart diplomatically, Iran is shaking up its military leadership. This week, 6 hardliners were elevated to top security positions. It's a move that could suggest Iran's new command may not be inclined to compromise. CNN's Nada Bashir joins us live now from London.
And it also shows that they have a hierarchy in place, right? It also shows that they have some sort of control, some sort of structure involved in place when they're, elevating people, they're promoting people. Again, we continue to talk about the different positions of people that we're listening to, whether it be, Galabaf or whether it be IRGC commanders or advisors or spokespeople. Like, these are positions that clearly have people that are filling them, that are recognized by, the broader media community, that have trust and recognize their affiliation with either the IRGC or, other factions within the Iranian government. And it clearly shows that they have something set up. So as much as Donald Trump loves to tell you that, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know who's in charge, I'm sure to some extent that's true on the lower levels. But at this point, it seems to be somewhat ironed out, as far as leadership is concerned over there on the other side.
Lots to tackle here. And obviously, on the one hand, you have the U.S. president claiming that the U.S. is now in charge of the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, when you look at shipping data, that appears very unlikely. And also you have...
It's just not fucking true at all. And then you can take a look at how, these people are having to report this. Brett Baer seems a little bit kind of hesitant right now to give Donald Trump too much credit or to put too much, to put too much of a rosy view as far as this situation is concerned. So I just want to see here how Brett Baer is, delivering this news, or Fox in general. I don't know if it's actually Brett Baer. I think it says his name, but who knows if he comes in later. Let's see what they have to say about it.
Diplomacy appears to be deadlocked in the Middle East as Iran continues to play hardball with the U.S. over the strait. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst reporting out of Tel Aviv with the latest that we know as of today. Trey, hello.
Yeah, hey, Bill, good morning. With no diplomatic breakthroughs, tension remains high across the Middle East. Major questions loom about the Strait of Hormuz and if a deal can be reached to reopen this critical international waterway. The Persian Gulf Strait Authority and Iranian government agencies...
Like, imagine still having the willingness to go out there on Fox News after how many times? And Trey Yingst, I think, came in a little later than Barack Ravid. Like, Barack Ravid was responsible for, I think, at least the first 25 times that Donald Trump came out and said that there was going to be a deal done right around the corner. And then it came in where he started spreading the wealth, sharing the wealth a little bit with Trey Yingst here of Fox News to get, more of the propaganda out there to the people. But it's just crazy to me that he has this willingness to continue to go out there and talk about any percentage or chance of a negotiation happening when he's been fooled time and time and time again and had to report on this bullshit time and time again with absolutely nothing being resolved, right? Nothing being finalized, not even remotely.
Wednesday, claims and repeated posts by U.S. officials that the Strait of Hormuz is no longer blocked do not change the reality. The Strait of Hormuz remains blocked.
Claims and repeated posts by the United States officials that the Strait of Hormuz is no longer blocked do not change the reality. The Strait of Hormuz remains blocked and will not be reopened until Iran's conditions are accepted. Now, who owns that? Who's controlling as far as that statement is concerned and what we're seeing actually on the ground, right? Who's showing ownership over that Strait of Hormuz? Because it sure as fuck isn't Donald Trump, right? It sure as fuck isn't the United States.
Will not be reopened until Iran's conditions are accepted. This came after President Trump posted yesterday on Truth Social saying, in part, the USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there is nothing Iran can do about it. Still, less than 10% of the average number of pre-war vessels are passing through the strait each day.
Let's go, Dame. Appreciate that. So the tote bag and the sticker just got delivered. Let's go. Let's go. Anybody that received any one of those, if you know, take a picture, throw it on there on the old socials. You can send it to my email if you don't want to put it on social media, and we'll see if we can, integrate it somehow into the coverage or into the intros or exits or something like that. But thank you, Dan, for the $2 contribution, and everybody else. Thank you to Kyle, Bald Thanos, Tina, Greg. Thank you to Bry Guy. Thank you to Dragons, Aurora, Midas, and thank you to Dame. For the people that have so far contributed in the YouTube chat. You too can contribute with either a super chat or a super sticker. You can gift memberships or sign up for a membership yourself just underneath me here on the YouTubes. And then if you can utilize or have the ability to utilize the Venmo, there's a Venmo QR code up in the corner. You can just take a quick picture of that. It takes you right to the Venmo, and a buck or two is all we ask for to support independent channels like this that hide nothing behind a paywall, no content behind a paywall. There's no subscriber-only chats. There's no ads that are going to be flooding your way during this fucking podcast. We don't charge for the Substack. All of the ways in which that we try to become and remain independent, that's the way that we're trying to do things. So it's with your help and your generosity, the appreciation that you have in this show and Ken's show that keeps us running. So let's see here what else they got to talk about as far as the strait being shut down is concerned.
Analysts warn of possible escalation in the region amid ongoing economic pressure on Iran due to the U.S. naval blockade.
And it goes on and on and on.
Well,
here we are.
General Longface.
4 months into it, the Iranian leadership, and that man is one of those leaders, they don't really care about the suffering of their own people. What they care about is surviving and having a level of control coming out of this so they can rebuild and recover their regime.
Not only that, but they understand, and I don't know if I have this pulled up here, but there was an article that was talking about the way in which the Iranian military basically was set up to fight against the United States and their very expensive munitions, right? So they had found, we talked about this, I think, yesterday a little bit, where they had found basically a way in which to utilize very cheap drones, cheaper made missiles and stuff to be able to attack with overwhelming force to be able to, again, overwhelm the much more expensive, takes a lot longer to build U.S. munitions that are heavily dependent on, the Gulf allies, obviously Ukraine, Israel, dependent heavily on these U.S. weapons and especially the THAADs and the Patriot missile interceptors and stuff. But they've found a way to just continue to throw up very cheaply made munitions to defend against or to, again, overwhelm these very expensive weapons by the United States, and it's put us in this position. Like, this is something that was calculated by the Iranians. This, low levels of ATACMs, low levels of Tomahawks, the THAADs, the Patriots. Like, this is something that, they kind of built their military on. So I don't know if I have that pulled up, but there is articles out there pretty much suggesting or confirming what we were talking about, I think, yesterday on the show, if I'm not mistaken.
The focus on Iran comes as we're also tracking developments between Israel and Lebanon. Talks are set to resume in September in Rome, aimed at normalizing ties between the two countries and disarming Iran-backed Hezbollah. Still, details have to be worked out about proposed security zones.
Under no circumstances do we retreat, not in Lebanon, not in Syria, not in Gaza, from the security zones. The lesson of October 7th is that we protect the residents by having the IDF present in these places and defending them.
So again, right off the bat, seems to be a non-starter as it pertains to, again, Iran's request for Israel to withdraw their forces from Lebanon. Now, Israel Cat's on your screen saying that they have no intentions on withdrawing from any of their security zones that they're now occupying. So again, it just seems to be all sides at odds The only way out for the United States right now is kind of to agree to the least amount of demands by the Iranians, but obviously they're going to have to agree to something to get us out of this, or it's going to be prolonged war. And then you obviously have to deal with what Israel is still perpetrating as far as their military, and that kind of how that fits into at least what we saw in the MOU, and basically every discussion since then has involved Israel and what they're doing in Lebanon at the very least. But all right, let's see if we can throw this on the screen here too, because this was something else that I wanted to talk about, which is pretty crazy. This was being reported here by the Wall Street Journal. And this is the U.S. and Ukrainian forces that went head-to-head in an exercise in Germany, and Ukraine's drones won. It says battlefield drill shows Pentagon hasn't fully absorbed lessons of Russian war. And we've talked about how this is going to come back to bite us in the ass, right? Not working more closely affiliated with the Ukrainian military, not being more hands-on, if not boots on, for fuck's sake, in this engagement is going to set us back, years, if not generations, as far as the technological advancements, the tactical advancements in drone warfare. And this is, it was kind of, played out in this exercise here. It says U.S. Army troops faced off against Ukrainian drone operators at a military exercise in Germany earlier this year. It didn't go well for the Americans. During the exercise called Combined Resolve, Ukrainian drone units easily spotted and defeated U.S. troops and armored vehicles on rotation from Fort Hood in Texas, according to people familiar with the events. The exercise, coupled with the U.S. casualties in Iran, show Americans' vulnerabilities to drones years after the U.S. made uncrewed systems an essential part of warfare. America pioneered use of long-range drones in the war. The Pentagon has recently spent billions acquiring new drone and counter-drone technology and formed special units to operate it. Still, in the Middle East this year, the U.S. has struggled to defend against Iran's long-range drones, which have killed and injured soldiers and destroyed aircraft. The drubbing in Germany conveyed lessons from Ukraine focused on short-range battlefield drones. The exercise held in April and May tested visiting troops' ability to operate and defend against the proliferation of smaller frontline drones that have dominated the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And we're talking about going on 5 years now. So if there's been ample time, plenty of time for the United States to recognize, or at least, get up the sack or the willingness to get over there and understand and study and be side by side more closely affiliated. Not saying that they're not at all, but I think we're very much lacking in the way that we can learn from the Ukrainians, and we're still stuck in this, like, we're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're the best, and what can we possibly learn from somebody else? They need to learn from us. Well, again, there are specific situations, and this one is a much bigger situation as far as the advancements in drone warfare and where the future of warfare is much more likely to go. Again, talking about Donald Trump's fucking golden battleships that he's building, his nuclear-powered battleships that have been obsolete since, again, the early stages of World War II, if not before that. But, it says that exercises like Combined Resolve are run precisely so that forces can experience realistic combat conditions. Army leaders in Europe over recent years have taken advantage of having Ukrainian forces on hand to participate and impart their hard-won skills to the U.S. and allied troops in practice on stimulated battlefields. The expectation is that failures are educational. British and Swedish exercises have also resulted in easy Ukrainian triumphs. So it wasn't just the Americans, wasn't just the U.S. forces there. It says here that the Brits and the Swedes also got their ass handed to them in these fucking exercises as well. Quote, "You can't get training like this in the United States," said Air Force General Alex Grinkowicz, the NATO top military leader. He said that after NATO forces exercise against the Ukrainian forces, the change is remarkable. Elliot Cohen, a scholar at the Center for Strategic and International Studies and the think tank, said that recent battlefield experience shows how drones of all kinds are essential to modern warfare. It is vital that the U.S. military master that, and thus far, unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case, he said. So, again, we've been bringing this up since day one of this war, and how it would be very prudent upon our military to be as involved as humanly possible, considering where the future of warfare was definitely heading, where it was clear it was heading as far as drones, as far as capability, fiber optic cameras, all of the things that we've seen kind of progress in this war so far against Russia. We're lacking, and it's been even more prevalent. It's even more obvious and activated under Pete Hegseth. which has been a huge problem. I think we could have done a lot more under Biden, and I think it's only gotten far worse, exponentially worse, obviously, under Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. But some good news coming out of the Ukrainian strikes here on Novorossiysk. We talked about, and I think we brought up I think it was a Preston Stewart video yesterday, who basically stated we heard about the strike. We saw, the drones go out. We heard the, responses by the Russians, but we didn't get any real confirmation just yet on, if any ships or submarines or anything were hit. Well, apparently that's changed, because we have this Sakakamis video where he says multiple ships confirmed damaged. Project 22-160, a ship turret toss, and a Kilo submarine Makarov frigate were also at least partially damaged. So let's see if we can take a look at this quick video, and I'll see if behind the scenes I can look for that that article that I was looking at about the way in which the Iranians have pretty much sculpted their military to utilize less expensive weaponry to fight the United States, incredibly expensive weaponry. So let me see if I'll throw this on your screen. We'll play this real quick, and then I'll see if I can find that in the background. So here's Sukakamis, credit where credit is due, talking about these new images that are being seen from the recent Ukrainian strike in Novorossiysk. So let's see if we can take a look at this.
Attack on Novorossiysk from yesterday, and the attack is better than I first thought, especially on the naval base, where multiple vessels have now been confirmed hit, some of them badly damaged. We're going to start with the most obviously damaged one. On screen now as before of a Project 22160 patrol boat. This isn't the same one hitting the attack, it's in a different position, but was shared to show the differences in how they look. And on screen now, the aftermath. The one destroyed here is the Valery Baikov, so this was hit hard. Possibly unrepairable damage. It was hit directly.
So again, it looks like, you can see the clear damage to that ship right there. It looks like the turret and the, the wheelhouse, as it were, are not in the same place that they started the morning at, right? So that's typically a bad thing for a ship like that. But, you can see the burn marks. You can see where the, where the munition struck. So clear evidence that the Ukrainians did, in fact, make a successful strike here. And I'll let him go on.
So this was hit hard. Possibly unrepairable damage. It was hit directly in the centre of the ship, penetrating the hull here, hit at the rear of the superstructure. I actually wonder if this may have been a Neptune missile that hit this rather than a drone. The blast here destroyed part of the superstructure towards the rear, destroyed some masts, and looks to have buckled part of the rest of the superstructure. So, a great strike this one. Additionally, a drone has also hit the helicopter landing pad, causing minor damage there. Now, cast your gaze towards the front of the boat, towards the main gun.
So I'm trying to find in the background here, I didn't even show you the tab, about the Iranians. I forget exactly where I saw the article. Yes, Iran military built, I think it was something like that, built to combat expensive U.S. weapons, something along those lines. See, Iran has intentionally structured its military doctrine around asymmetric warfare and economic cost-imposing strategy by prioritizing mass-producible, low-cost assets like the Shahed 136, loitering munition over expensive, high-end power projection platforms. Tehran forces the U.S. and its allies into an unsustainable financial mismatch. Right, so that's, let me see here, if that was Forbes. Was it a Forbes article I was talking about? See, Iran is betting it can outlast. Oh, let me throw this on the screen. Iran is betting it can outlast the U.S. Here's why it matters. Is it going to let us read it? Probably not. Probably not. Let's see here. The summary. Article advocates for the long game approach, sustained military pressure against Iran's offensive capabilities, coupled with the robust economic campaign halting its vital oil revenues. The U.S. must detach its strategy from election cycles, ensuring Iran faces escalating costs for continued resistance. See what else this says. But basically, in short, in summary, it's just generally talking about the way that Iran has set up its military specifically for this fight and to outlast the United States or, anybody in the West it went to war with that had these, incredibly expensive munitions that, it utilizes to keep its troops safe or to, again, go on the offensive. So, in conjunction with, the Chinese intelligence, in conjunction with Russian intelligence, they've found out and they found a way where they could just, again, overwhelm a lot of these systems systems, whether it be the Iron Dome in Israel, whether it be the air defense systems in and around the U.S. bases. They found a way where they could just throw up a bunch of cheaply made bullshit, and then eventually, at some point, they're going to have a few are going to sneak through. And if you can get a few of these missiles to sneak through, then they can do substantial damage. And the cost effectiveness, right, is more a burden for the United States, who sent up missiles at millions and millions and millions of dollars a piece, whereas the Shaheds or the missiles that the Iranians utilize are in a lot of cases a lot less expensive. So you can see how that, as the fight, kept going on, as it persists, how it continues to be in favor of the Iranians as far as cost effectiveness and how much they spend to try to, again, damage or inflict harm upon the United States or, again, the Gulf nations. But all right, let's see if we can dive into this one. I know I'm probably going to get you guys out of here a little bit early today, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, depending on how long we spend on this one. But this is talking about another really good night from the Ukrainians, another about 400 or so drones and missiles that was sent into either occupied territories or the, Russia proper itself. So again, I want to let the professor, who does a pretty good job at combining a lot of the reporting done by a lot of the different outlets that take a look at these situations and put it all into one combined video. So much appreciated, and a lot of respect for him doing this work and allowing us to watch these videos to get all of the news, the information, and combine this with all the other reporting that we do to get the best picture of what's going on in this fight. So this is titled, again, Ukraine had another really good night, not just another good night, another really good night. So let's see what else we can get into as far as information and successes from the Ukrainians. I believe you typically over the last 24 or so hours he covers.
August 13th, 2026, Ukraine had another really good night. And I don't say that unless the evidence is overwhelming. 3.3 times as many Ukrainian to Russian drones.
Also, and that reminds me, I almost forgot, I did receive some video evidence and confirmation of how our vehicle is doing. I haven't heard yet, and I didn't get confirmation on whether or not I can show it or post it or anything like that. So I'm gonna hold back on that. But I did receive some video evidence of the boys in action utilizing the vehicle that you guys were responsible for raising the funds for, getting into action. You guys raised the funds. I drove it there. We made the handover, and it's in action right now, fighting in the Kharkiv direction. I think just north of Kharkiv in the Lipsy direction, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it was pretty cool to get the confirmation and just see it kind of wasn't a long video or doing anything crazy or anything like that, but you could see it was being, it was transporting soldiers, which is, that's enough for me. So once I get either some confirmation that I can show it or play it and there's nothing being exposed on there, or otherwise, I'll let you know. But I do want to let you know and tell you that it's in action. It's in action, baby.
Went out last night and they did some damage. So let's look at what was going on here. Overnight strikes. We see this. This is the map from Drone Bomber, and you saw that in the thumbnail as well. 440 drones reported going out into Russia last night. Now,
and this is pretty much nightly, right? I mean, we're talking about somewhere in the vicinity of 350, 400 or so on a nightly basis that, Ukraine is being able to send over. In a lot of these nights, it's a lot more than the Russians are able to send over. But obviously, the hypersonic and ballistic missiles have, increasingly damaging effect, and their ability to be shot down at almost zero right now kind of gives them a little bit of an advantage. But it is good to see the continued efforts here by the Ukrainians. There's no slowing down. The target packages might change. Might go from oil refineries to wild berries to supply trucks to barges down in the Sea of Azov or whatever the fuck it might be. It might kind of shift and kind of ebb and flow a little bit, but they're consistently throwing a lot at the Russians on a nightly basis and bringing the fight to them. So again, just a ton of different aspects and angles and things to look at in this war, in ways you can kind of, try to make an argument for who's doing better in which situation. So it's good to see that, at least as far as the ability of the Ukrainians to continue hammering away at these different targets that have been, pretty consistent over the last months, years of this war is a good thing, obviously.
Russians claim that they've knocked down 362 of these Ukrainian drones.
Bullshit.
Even if they're telling the truth, which I'm not sure that they are. This is reported by TASS, and how they do some funny numbers. But even if that was true, they still did some damage. Again, 3.3 times as many Ukrainian drones going out into Russia as Russian drones going into Ukraine. So let's back up just a day.
And I think
Overnight,
that right there, I don't know if that's been a consistent percentage, right? As far as the, the ratio of drones sent over by Ukrainians to the ones that have been, incoming from the Russians. But, if we can continue to see 3.5, 4 times the amount going over, obviously that's going to be beneficial for the Ukrainians. Clearly, that doesn't take away from the necessity to find some mitigation for the hypersonic and ballistic missiles and the lack of air defenses being supplied to the Ukrainians at this point. We heard just the other day that, Zelensky was actively targeting and going after some of these launch sites, which hopefully would have some impact and some effect. But we need more. Obviously, they need more. But, to see that the Russians are still feeling it on a nightly basis, and we've seen kind of the re-implementation of these fuel lines in a lot of areas of Russia where they kind of subsided for a little bit, where the target packages changed. So, but now we're back to seeing kind of those lines in a lot of these places. So it's good to see that the war is still being brought to their front door.
Early morning, Ukrainian missiles and drones conducted a mass combined attack on Novorossiysk. I talked about that yesterday. And so what happened? So Novorossiysk, the grain facility, the silos, associated infrastructure.
So this is further confirmation of what we were just watching on the Secaucus video here.
Main conveyor leading toward ships at the port were hit. And I was asking, why are they doing that? Is it just to hit the grain elevator? That seems a little, or the grain infrastructure, silos and that sort of thing. It seemed a little weird. Well, they also hit other things. SBU and Ukraine's defense forces confirmed hits on 3 Russian warships during the Novorossiysk operation. Remember, this is Russia's largest military port in the Black Sea, where they, felt like they were protected. Caliber frigates, Admiral Essen and Admiral Makarov, plus patrol ship Vasily Boykov. And earlier it was reported that there were 4. I'm not sure if there were 3 or 4. Nonetheless, they struck, and in a place where Russia felt like it was protected. Novorossiysk.
Again, that's a huge aspect of this whole thing too. It's not just, any port. It's not just, there's no name fucking village or no name area on the front in which this attack occurred. The Russians will take notice that even Novorossiysk is no longer being able to be kind of defended against. It sends a big message to people that understand the importance of, what's left of the Russians, kind of control over down there in the Black Sea. And this is obviously not a good direction for it to be going in for people. And it sends a pretty clear message to anybody that knows anything about it.
Grain terminal after yesterday's Ukrainian strike.
And again, not the first time that it's been struck, but that just makes it even worse. The fact that the Russians know that it's a target, know that it's likely to be struck again, and still don't have the ability to defend against the incoming Ukrainian attacks, again, sends a pretty clear message.
Sustained damage during the attack and on the Russian Black Sea port, with operations suspended. So this is what that looks like. You can see the damage to the grain silos and that sort of thing. Now, this is
looked like a bunch of them that were hit on that one. Looked like that was a pretty. So you got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These looks like at least all 7 of these have taken damage.
You can see the damage to the grain silos.
And as it panned over, you can see even more. Right, so there's another 1, 2, 3, 4 at least that have taken damage.
This is one of the big hubs for their export of wheat, which is another key product that they try to sell in order to keep funding up. Russian Railways has limited the shipment of goods to the port of Novorossiysk now. Both the railway stations, Novorossiysk and Novorossiysk export, will be restricted. This is another big blow to Russia's exporters by Ukraine after the drone strikes on the Sea of Azov.
And again, just chipping away, man. Just chipping away at Russia's ability to supply its war machine. Its different, little ploys and plans that it's got all over the world, and especially all over its country to, rape, pillage, and plunder and steal and fraud people to continue sending millions and billions of rubles to the war effort. So again, just picking away at all these different things, whether it's the wild berries, the oil, their ability to supply their military with the necessary fuel to continue their fucking fight. All of these little things are slowly, having an effect on the abilities, the capabilities of the Russian military. Is it having, an ability quick enough? It's obviously a different conversation, a different debate that we could have, but it's going in the right direction. It's definitely happening in a positive manner as far as the infrastructure and the networks that the Ukrainians are attacking.
Okay, so we will shut down Russia's war machine, destroying the infrastructure, fleet,
And again, this is posted by the Defense of Ukraine. It says that we will shut down Russia's war machine, destroying its infrastructure, its fleet, logistics, fuel, and energy facilities, and enterprises working to wage war against Ukraine. Our operation in Novorossiysk was unique. The combined strike involved missiles, strike drones, and naval drones. Russia proved powerless against the synchronized use of Ukrainian strike capabilities. This is the result of joint efforts and growing synergy across the defense forces. I thank our warriors for their precision. I thank Ukrainian weapons manufacturers for solutions that give Ukraine a greater ability to strike the enemy.
Fuel and energy facilities and enterprises working to wage war against Ukraine.
Yeah, I read that.
Strike drones and naval drones. Russia proved powerless against synchronized use of Ukrainian strike capabilities. So, yeah, that does seem to be evident of what was being done. Now, that was yesterday. Let's look at what happened today, and it's all good news going forward here as well. The night of August 13th, Defense Forces of Ukraine struck the Gazprom Neftkazim Salavat oil refinery complex in the city of Salavat, Republic of Bashkortostan. So Ukrainian drones hit 2 targets deep in Bashkortostan on August 13th. That's the day. The Gazprom refinery and a wild berries logistics hub. Okay. I mean,
all right, get out the bingo board, ladies and gentlemen. Get out the bingo board. If you got the wild berries bingo board and you got your marker, please take that out now. It appears we have another wild berries to mark down. This is talking about from today. It says from today, the 13th, Ukrainian drones hit 2 targets deep in Russia's Bashkortostan on 13 August, which is today. The Gazprom Neftkazim Salavat refinery, and one of Russia's largest, set ablaze for the second time in this month, and a wild berries logistics hub striking Russia's biggest online retailer more than 1,300 kilometers from the border. So again, mark it. I don't know what number that is, and we'll see if we can, get a more specific location on this one. But let's see what we got.
It's one thing after another. So let's look first here. This is the refinery. Ukraine's general staff confirms strike on Russian refinery 1,300 kilometers from the border. Ukraine's drones targeted a logistics hub owned by Wildberries as well. And another Wildberries logistics hub. Here, this is the same thing I'm talking about.
So another Wildberries logistics hub near Ufa was attacked today by Ukrainian AN-196 kamikaze drones. Part of its facility is now burning following the strike. The hub is located roughly 1,300 kilometers from the front line. So Wildberries logistics near Ufa. I believe you can mark that down on your little Wildberries bingo board that everybody's been playing along with since the beginning of this. Targeting. This specific targeting of these Wildberries facilities.
Was attacked today by Ukrainian AN-196 Luty kamikaze drones, and you can see the burning off in the background. Yeah. I mean, these things, when they get hit, they go
it's
up.
Fucking crazy how much these things burn off and cook off, like all the plastics and obviously the cardboard and shipping material and everything else. It's crazy. It looks a lot like oil refinery strikes and, hitting, different gas plants and stuff like that and ammunition depots, as it were. But it's crazy the amount of damage that's done by the Ukrainian drone attacks on these facilities.
They go up like a refinery would go up just because everything in there is probably flammable. So Wildberry sellers, according to Verstka, are reporting en
masse that they are not getting paid. This is what I talked about. These are these secondary impacts that we're going to start hearing more frequently, which is, again, the people that are losing their livelihood because of these strikes, the jobs that are being lost in these different places that I'm sure rely heavily upon the Wildberries for occupation, for jobs in the area. Obviously, the business owners that utilize Wildberries for drop shipping or whatever it may be. So we're going to start noticing here things like this, where it says people en masse are reporting that they're not getting paid for the sales that happened in August. The company is supposed to transfer money to their balance within 5 working days. Wildberries' relationship with sellers is outright toxic. So let's see if we can get a little closer look of what this says. Wildberry sellers complained about delays in payments from the sale of goods, as vendors of the Wildberries marketplace are massively reporting that the company is delaying the payment of funds from the sale of goods issued on August 3. It says, according to the company, support messages in a specialized chat and offer sellers had to receive the money no later than 5 working days after the withdrawal was completed. That is before August 10. However, that has not happened so far. Sellers' right to support the marketplace to get an answer when they can expect to pay, and ask other entrepreneurs if they have received money. So basically just a big, chat board of people wondering if they got your money. Did you get your check? No, I didn't get my check. Your fucking shit got burnt. My shit got burnt. What do we do now?
Mass that they are not getting paid for sales that happened in August. The company is supposed to transfer the money to their balance within 5 working days. Wildberry's relationship with sellers is outright toxic. Well,
and again, with the size of this company, like, this is going to, I think, have maybe not an overwhelming impact or putting pressure on Vladimir Putin or the Russian government, but it's definitely going to be something that's on their radar, obviously, and not just, I'm talking about the damages, the lack of gear that can get to the military. Like, I'm talking about specifically how pissed off and like vocal the people that are getting fucked over by these strikes are on social media. Different, the more that they speak out, the more it's going to cause a problem for the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin specifically. And again, with the size of this company and how big they are and how many places they actually have and how many people are employed, like, it's going to be a lot of voices out there, whether it be the business owners or the people that work in these facilities, on social media, pissed off that they're not getting checks, that they don't have work anymore, that, it's going to be something. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to have like an overwhelming effect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely going to be on his radar, their radar, I should say.
Toxic thing with Wildberries, but okay. Wildberries Kurdistan facilities, cost investments and job rebuilding costs. So they had 10,000 jobs planned, 5,000 actual, because they were building out more. They had investment of 12 billion rubles planned, 7 billion were actually spent so far. Area of 220,000 planned and 123 actual. And the rebuild cost will be 12 billion rubles. So Wildberries is having a hard time here. That was the equivalent of 23 NFL football fields that went up in smoke here.
That's unreal. I mean, we're talking about the size equivalent of the factories, the Wildberry facilities in NFL football fields, to give you guys like an actual or an accurate visualization, right? A representation of kind of what we're talking about here. And you can see here the 123,000 square meters is equal to 23 NFL football fields. And just kind of gives you an idea of how big the square footage is of the factories that have been taken out.
This Wildberries. Ukrainian attack drones also reportedly hit the Russian-occupied Balaklava power station in Crimea last night. The occupied Crimean capital of Sevastopol is completely without power, and this was what was being hit. So it's bad for Crimea. They're going to have a rough time moving forward, trying to sustain itself. A Russia relay station that steers attack drones over occupied Crimea was struck, according to Kyiv. The Ukrainian General Staff reported hitting the ground station near Olenivka. That name should sound familiar. Olenivka. That helps Russia control its Goran and Gerba attack drones, along with a repair unit near Mariupol and a drone unit staging point in Luhansk. Russia flies these drones through a chain of repeaters mounted on towers that boost the control signal so operators inside Russia can steer them hundreds of kilometers to their target. So taking out the repeaters is a big thing. Ukraine's general staff also confirmed a series of strikes on Russian military targets in Crimea, hitting the Saki airfield.
I mean, it is crazy the amount, the list of targets that are consistently gone after on a nightly basis by Ukraine, and they continue to have success, right? The Russians will try to tell you that they shot down a considerable amount or percentage of the drone, but what we continue to see is effective strikes, whether it's hitting ships, whether it's hitting oil refineries, Wildberries, supply trucks, the counterattacks on the Russian convoys that we've talked about recently. Like they're having this success. They just need they just need air defenses to kind of mitigate what Russia's able to do as far as damages on them as well. I did find this. I was floating around in the background, and I did find this. It wasn't the exact article that I was looking for, and I know we're kind of switching back to Iran here real quick, and sorry to jump around, but we were talking about the Iranian military's capabilities and how they've basically set their military up to fight the United States or the West militaries with their expensive their expensive munitions. And you can see here in this quote, and this is from, and I think from a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken, it says, Iran continue its war with the U.S. for 2+ years until Trump's term ends in 2029. It says in a rare interview, IRGC senior advisor Mohammad Reza outlines Iran's war strategy. And he says, this is important. The longer this war lasts, the more experience we gain. We also have the American military. We also seen how the American military is weaker than we perceived. We have to attain deterrence so that the enemy never dares to attack us. One way is to prolong this war until we get to the next term of the presidency and cause attrition. So again, this shows their complete control over the situation, or at least their ability, their confidence in projecting complete control over the situation. It says the number of missiles we manufacture every day is more than the number we launch. Rest assured, even if this war lasts years, until the last day Iran's rockets will be launched, if there comes a day when Iran has no more missiles left, then that's when we'd be even more dangerous for America. The U.S. has thousands of economic interests throughout the world, and all of them can be easily destroyed. So him saying basically the longer this war lasts, the more experience we gain and the better it is for us, is them recognizing that their entire military is based upon the cost differentiation between what they're expending on their weapons and how much it costs for them to produce their weapons that they're using, and how much it costs for us to produce and how long it takes for us to produce the weapons that we need to use for offensive and defensive capability. So again, sorry to jump around on you, but I did just find that in the background that was kind of touching a little bit on what I was speaking about earlier for the, about the Iranian military and how it was basically built to do this exact thing, to basically get the United States in a war of attrition and ultimately have us expend a lot more, billions and billions and billions of dollars more in munitions and interceptors than they would need to expend in order to, again, maintain control over the strait, damage our U.S. bases, take out our forces, all of those things in that asymmetric warfare that we continue to talk about. All right, back into the professor video. Like I said, sorry to jump around.
And a relay near Kramatorsk used to control the Goran-Gerba attack drones. Okay, there was also another interesting story. Robert Shagiv, a former Ukrainian submarine commander who betrayed Ukraine and defected to Russia in 2014, later took part in Russian submarine missile strikes against Ukraine, was killed in an explosion in occupied Sevastopol. Shagiv rose to the rank of captain first rank. According to preliminary information, the explosive device was planted inside a trash bin next to a bench on whatever the road was. Shagiv died at the scene. So those kind of hits keep coming. Just a follow-up, Orenburg governor says the Orsk refinery has been completely shut off after the latest attack. This is in blue because it's an older, like a follow-up story. And he says the repairs could take up to 6 months because the equipment is imported and difficult to replace under sanctions. So when I say it was a really good night, the Ukrainians had a really good night. They had a really good night. Let's look at Russian strikes. 111 enemy UAVs down. That is out of.
So now this is on the opposite side, right? So now we're talking about incoming, which is again important to continue to relay to people. You don't just do the outgoing. You don't just do the successes. You got to make sure to talk about everything that took place so everybody gets an accurate picture. It says at night on August 13th from 1800 on August 12th, the enemy attacked with 133 strike UAVs of the Shahed type, including jet-powered ones, the Gerbera and the Parity type decoy drones. 111 enemy UAVs were downed or suppressed. And again, that's 111 out of the 133. The attack is ongoing with several enemy UAVs in the airspace. This is from the Euromaidan press, says that Ukraine extinguished all fires that broke out after a Russian attack on the Kyiv Oblast. The strike hit a warehouse full of ordinary cups and plates meant for sale, mundane goods bound for somebody's kitchen table, another entry in Russia's war against Ukrainian civilian life rather than any military targets. And again, it goes on here, I do believe, speaking about some of the other Russian attacks. It says a Russian drone killed a locomotive driver and his assistant in Odessa. I think there's pictures coming out of that attack as well. You can see where the train in the cab was specifically targeted. It says when the attack alert sounded, the driver headed towards a station nearby to evacuate passengers. The Russian drone changed its direction abruptly, and the driver was unable to fully stop the train and leave. 340 passengers and crew members were evacuated safely. Russia has been attacking trains a lot recently, deepest condolences to the families of the driver and his assistant. And again, this is, even more scary, having spent, about 15 hours or so, if not more, on trains coming out of Kyiv, getting to the Polish border, going from the Polish border to Warsaw. like to see that this could have easily been me, or easily been a train that I or somebody else involved with NAFO or any of the fabulous organizations that I've had the opportunity to travel to Ukraine with. Like, it's scary shit. Like, the fact that they're actively still targeting civilian infrastructure, innocent people traveling on these trains, going to and from work, getting to and from different parts of the country, tourists that are in the country trying to help or do good deeds or bring in aid, or just traveling in general, is a scary thought. So let's see here. I think there was another one, or yeah, there was this one as well, where a Russian Shahed drone hit the locomotive of an Odessa Dnipro passenger train this morning, killing the driver and the assistant. So there's a little more of that information coming out of there.
Again, this is the Russian jet Shahed that hit the locomotive, and this is the scene there. Today in Odessa region, Russians...
And I'll read this out for you guys here. This is from Volodymyr Zelensky about that specific attack. It says, today in the Odessa region, the Russians once again destroyed an ordinary passenger train locomotive with a jet-powered drone. There were 340 people on the train, and whoever was operating that drone certainly could not have been unaware that the target was entirely civilian. As of now, unfortunately, we know that the locomotive engineer and his assistant were killed in the strike. My condolences to their families and loved ones. There were also overnight strikes in 11 regions. The Russians used more than 130 attack drones. Every day, the Russians strike ordinary people's lives simply for the sake of terror, and unfortunately, far from every such attack receives a strong response from the world. More air defense support and more pressure on Russia are needed if the world is serious about stopping this war in Europe. So I definitely agreed with that sentiment in those statements there by the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. This is reported by Radio Free Europe. As Kyiv struggles to counter deadly Russian strikes, Ukrainian officials say Moscow is once again using North Korean weaponry to hit cities in Ukraine. Here are the missiles that Pyongyang is reported to have supplied for Russia. And you can see some of the officials there in Pyongyang walking around those missiles. But again, what does that tell you about the production capabilities of the Russians? Clearly, they're having the need to supplement their missile capabilities, their missile production capabilities, with North Korean drones here. North Korean missiles. So it just shows you that if Russia had the capability to strike Ukraine and Kyiv in particular, night after night with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these ballistics and hypersonic missiles, they would. But they just don't have the ability. So they're going from hand to mouth, basically factory to the field, every time they build one to have to launch it, or to kind of have it sit for a day or two, a week or two, a month or two, until they can stockpile enough to kind of, adequately systemize their attacks that they want to get done there.
As Kyiv struggles to counter deadly Russian missile strikes, Ukrainian officials say Moscow is once again using North Korean weaponry to hit cities in Ukraine. Here are the missiles that Pyongyang is reported to have supplied for Russia's war. So, yep, that's what that looks like. Firefighter with over 20 years in service was...
So it says it was killed in a double tap attack, a technique Russia uses to target first responders and emergency services following an earlier strike. We've seen this utilized, by multiple bad actors around the world. Israel, obviously Russia, where they lure the people into the first attack. They wait until people show up to sift through the rubble, till the first responders are there putting out the fire, digging through the destruction for survivors, and then they initiate another missile or another drone attack to make sure that they get all of the first responders and people that are there trying to help, enveloped in the damage as well, in the destruction as well.
Killed in a double tap. That's where they hit the building. The emergency responders show up and they start putting out the fire, and then they hit it again to try to kill the emergency
And I think there's one segment here, I think we're running out of time, where he talks about the battlefield maps and he goes through the overnight losses. Let's see if it's this part here.
Okay, battlefield update.
Yeah, here we go. So another 1,310 Russian personnel that were eliminated from the battlefield, taking that number up to 1,462,970 that have been lost or eliminated from the battlefield. Another 3 tanks that were taken out, bringing that number up to 12,262. Another 3 armored fighting vehicles, bringing that total number up to 25,130 in this war. Another 51 artillery systems that were taken out in the last 24-hour period, bringing that astronomical number up to 47,824. Another one MLRS rocket system was taken out, which is another 2,223 for this war. Another 1 air defense system, which is another 1,562. So again, these numbers just unbelievably astronomical and just kind of don't sound real at this point. And there's just a difficulty to associate a kind of a dollar amount, a dollar value to the equipment lost. And then obviously there's no dollar value to associate, to the 1.4, nearly 1.5 million Russian soldiers that have been eliminated or, again, severely wounded where they'll no longer be returning to the battlefield. So let's see if there's another aspect where he talks about the front lines here where they typically don't line up or something he's talking about. Let's see here.
Casualties above the 7-day average despite fewer engagements. Now, there's a claim of Russian territorial gains of 46 kilometers squared reported by LiveMap, and that sounds weird. And I'll address why it sounds weird to me in just a moment. Overnight attacks, a decent drone interception rate, but 31 locations hit or affected by debris, 12 Ukrainian strikes reported, and 440 strike drones launched into Russia and occupied Ukraine. Now, this 46 square kilometers of Russian territorial gain, well, there's a couple things here. Preston Stewart posted this Russian media Rybar's map of Dnipropetrovsk.
So it was Russian media Rybar's map of Dnipropetrovsk direction based off of new geolocated Ukrainian footage. This Russian assessment is off by as much as 20 plus kilometers in some area. And we've done these comparisons, whether it was the Institute for the Art of War, whether it was the Deep State map, whether it was Live UA, or whether it was Rybar. So we've consistently pointed out that Rybar is, much more willing to take the Russian propaganda and any of the bullshit that they're espousing as far as territorial gains and put that directly onto the map, where Deep State typically and does from my opinion, does a good job at waiting till there's confirmation and adequate information out there to suggest or to make it likely, to ascertain that that person or that group or that brigade or that military is where they say they were and is occupying the territory that they say they're occupying here. So you can see here, Preston Stewart reporting that these are off by some 20 kilometers, which would have a huge impact on the amount of square kilometers taken over, as we just reported in the last one. So clear a case of Russian propaganda trying to overstate the territorial gains. Even in this specific area we talked about recently, Ukraine pushing back and taking back some territory, if I'm not mistaken.
Direction. Based on new geolocated Ukrainian footage, this Russian assessment is off by as much as 20 kilometers squared in some areas. And then we see Special Herzon Cat, another OSINT researcher.
Deep State map has updated its map, showing that 241 square kilometers returned to Ukrainian control, which we've been talking about this week. Ukrainian forces liberated 19 settlements and pushed Russian troops back near another 6, which again we've been talking about. The liberated settlements are, and I'm not even going to try to go through all of those, but we've covered a few of those with the Denis Davidov videos and obviously the Preston Stewart video speaking about these frontline maneuvers, especially in the southern area, the southern portion down and around Konstantinivka. Speaking about the fortress belt cities of Druskivka, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Lyman, and how we need to defend in the Dobropelia sector, from that Russian attempt to try to flank the fortress belt cities and get in and around in the rear there. So something that we've been, hopefully adequately covering by your standards here in the chat. If you could give us a like, a thumbs up, if you could hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel even if you find some benefit, some value in the coverage that we give here and, kind of how we go over what's going on in this war, that would be fantastic. Also says here by the Euromaidan Press that Ukraine's general staff released footage documenting the liberation of 26 settlements during a counteroffensive across Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and the Zaporizhia Oblast. So, again, anything that we could use to further corroborate the territorial advancements, the territorial gains by the Ukrainians, and not just these flag planting operations, which I have so many problems with, being utilized on either side, right? I'll call it out on both sides, whichever military decides to use that tactic. I don't care for, unless, of course, you have the documented footage to corroborate that you have, more forces in that area, enough forces in that area to substantiate the fact that you now control that territory here. So it says Russian losses in the operation reached at least 9,550 killed and over 6,600 wounded. Again, in these, in the liberation of these 26 settlements. So not only taking back the settlements, but making the Russians pay a very heavy price for even trying to defend or in the first place trying to occupy those territories to begin begin with.
Documenting the liberation of 26 settlements during a counteroffensive across Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia oblasts. Operational information as of 0800 204 combat engagements. A few other stories, and wait till the end because I have something really important to show you. Footage of destroyed Russian transports.
You can't suck me in like that. We got too much to go through. Let's see if there's anything at the end that he says. Ukrainian support bridge is titled Russia's critical supply routes. I'm going to dive ahead just a second, see if he talks about anything.
Here, you see it now. You can see it coming into the picture, and yeah. So, this is how this works. This is okay. So, but Russia has stopped
producing the Garan 3, shifted to manufacturing about 3,000 Garan 4 and Garan 5 jet attack drones per month, according to Ukraine's military intelligence. HUR Deputy Chief Vadim Skibitsky separately said that the change is linked to the Ukrainian interceptors stopping them. The newer drones depend on Chinese engines. So I think we can ditch out of this one right here. I think that's enough information and news for one day. I appreciate you guys for sticking with me to the end, as you always do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the stream out, clip whatever section of the stream you want, share it out on your social medias, tag me in that, and I'll be sure to repost anybody out there that's doing those things that obviously come across my FYP. So what do you say we get into thanking some of the people over there on the Venmo side of things that were nice enough to contribute to the show? Great show for today, I think, but I'm always biased, so let me know what you guys think in the chat. Let's get over here to the Venmos, and I'll say some thank yous, get you guys out of here so you can support some other great independent creators on this platform as well. Much appreciated, too. First today is Jamie. Thank you to Jamie E. From one mass hole to another. Thanks for all you do, brother. Oh, right back at you, Jamie. Thank you so much for those kind words. Thank you for that contribution as well. The 20 there on Venmo. Very much appreciated. Right behind Jamie was Roxanne. Thank you to Roxanne for the $2 contribution. Because I'm cheap, she says. No, you're not. Stop that. And then right underneath Roxanne was Mark L. Thank you to Mark L as well. With the lobster signal, sending in the $5 contribution to keep this channel going. Much appreciated to you guys. Then from the last couple days, thank you to Laurie, Allison, Nancy. Thank you to Nina very, very much for what you've done for this channel. Thank you to Bry Guy, John M. You guys have been fantastic in taking care of me. Thank you to Jenny Faye and Corey, as always, for your support. Tom and Victoria, Roger and Karen, Allison, for always sending in a little chip, a little contribution here on Venmo. Let's see if we can thank some people on the YouTube side of things, if there was any today. And, of course, there was. First up today is going to be Kyle Smith. How are you, my friend? Hope you're doing well. Always good to see you in the chat. Let me know if there's anything we can do for you. Thank you so much for the gifted Boston Brian membership and keeping people affiliated and engaged with the chat. Very much appreciated to you. Thank you to Bald Thanos for the $2 contribution. Will Shira get 10% of this super chat? So will Tiff get 10% of this super chat? Christ, I don't know if I get 10% of that super chat. You shit me? I'm not even sure. But I'll do my best to send along any contributions to the people that you want to get them to. So thank you to Bald Thanos. Thank you to Tina for the 10 jewels and the gold coin. Much appreciated. Thank you to Greg for being here for 27 months. Missed opportunity. Could have had him eating McDonald's. Oh, as far as the food card is concerned, right. So thank you for being here as always, Greg. Like you said, for 27 months being a member, very much appreciated, very valued member of the community. Thank you to Bry Guy for being here and $5 contribution that you've been sending in. So glad my plumber buddy finally stopped talking to me. Man, can plumbers talk, but lined me up nicely with a cash job. Slava Ukraine. Venmo cash is king. Well, I mean, I think I'm proving your point even more forcefully here as far as plumbers being able to talk. So that's why I started my own talk show, my own podcast, as I was coming from the plumbing field myself. So, I got no disputes. I got nothing I can dispute as far as that is concerned, Bri. Thank you for the $5 contributions. Thank you to Dragons Aura Midas for the 440 jewels with the Uncle Alert. Much appreciated for everything you do, not only for this community, but for other communities as well. I have no doubt. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you to Dame Dog, talking about how he got his tote bag and the sticker delivered. Thank you guys for all of your support, really and truly. Everybody in the Patreon community that, got a tote bag or a sticker in the 2 levels that, they had them shipped out already. Thank you guys so much, really and truly, for your patience, your generosity, your support, your kind words. You just supporting this passion of mine the way that you guys do, along with the YouTube memberships, the YouTube members as well. It really means the world. So thank you to Dame. Thank you so much to Sammy Joe How are you, Sammy Joe, for the 10 jewels with the gold coin? Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for being here, spending some time here with me and us here at Blunt Politics. So, yeah, I'll let you guys go today. 2 minutes early. Look at that. 2 minutes under the gun. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Thursday. I will see you tomorrow for the Friday show. Undoubtedly going to be some craziness, some ridiculousness to talk about, to get into. If you find some benefit in this show, if you find some value in the things that we talk about, if you find some value in maybe the insights and opinions that we espouse here, please think about sharing this out. Please think about, maybe picking a friend or a family member or a coworker, send the live stream out to, or some of the short clips, maybe that'll be a good entry into this live stream. Send out the clips that we post out there on Instagram and the shorts on YouTube, and see if they catch on to maybe some of the funny moments, some of the more informative moments. That would be fantastic. A big double salute to all the mods. Can't thank you enough for everything that you guys have done for this channel. Been very blessed to have some of the best mods on the social media, in the social media atmosphere. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to the best chat ever, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday show. Stay loud, stay proud, stay aggressive, stay informed, and stay in the fucking fight, please. We need you guys. So get out of your seats. You're just not pissed off enough. We need you in the streets. We need you more loud, more proud, and more aggressive. But make sure you're keeping your head on a swivel. My name is Brian. This has been Blunt Politics, and I will see you guys tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern here on the East Coast. That's 11 a.m. tomorrow. Same time, same place. Make sure you hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel. And like I said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. 7-5 there, Shovel Dad. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Tiff. Thank you, Evie Zahn. Thank you to Yakov. Thank you to Orb Bruma. Thank you, Leon. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dame Dog, for what you do. Thank you to Carol, No Money G, everybody here. Thank you to Gemini. Much appreciated. Luck Dragon. Thank you to EF in the chat there. Much appreciated. Plumbers talk a lot of shit. I get it. I see you in the chat. WW Gamer. Thank you guys so much. Hit that like button on the way out. Thank you, Kelly. I see you over there on Facebook. You can't hide from me. All right, I'm out. I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday show. We'll see what craziness we can get into tomorrow. All right, big salute.
Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую. Вітаю, Бостон Брайан. Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
Call them dumps, big massive dumps.
Brian, you're drunk. You're drunk.
Oh, get those lights off! Off! Turn them off. They're too bright. Turn them off!
I'm standing up here bashing the living shit out of Nazis.
Like we always do about this time.
I mean, they've been conserved since the time of lobsters, right? There weren't trees around when lobsters first manifested themselves on the planet.
Yesterday's a hard word for me. We're miners. Do we love miners? I love miners. A new form of vicious violation to our country. Somebody said, is that a Trump statement or is that real? We're inviting Americans from all across the country to come.
Here's a thought. Grow a sack, fill it with some balls.
Oh, we got some new designs on the merch site. Check out the new designs on the merch site as well. Head over
Вітаю,
to
Бостон Брайан.
bostonbryan.com.
Мій позивний танцор. Я представник 72-ї бригади. Дякую тобі і твоїм підписникам за цей донат, за цю чудову машину, яка буде нас возити усіх на позиції, захищати Україну і наближати перемогу. Разом усі до перемоги. Дякую.
Bad news, bad news. Even when it's good news, it's bad news.
Where you going? Nowhere. We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel, and he's doing great. Eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. The big, fat, sloppy